What's the dumbest way you've hurt yourself? Picture me at work as a bartender. My shift is almost over. Sweet, sweet freedom after I do the very simple task of stocking the wines. Grab a bunch of bottles to carry to the fridge for the next shift. One starts to slip. I clench up hoping that the errant bottle will stay on point. It does not. Cue bottle falling slowly to the hardwood floor. I stick out my foot in hopes to keep it from shattering and costing my employer a full $7.50's worth of bad Pinot Grigio from shattering on the floor. Now I have a nice healthy bruise on my foot and the bottle bounces away without a care in the world. Fun fact: those bottles are designed to withstand a whole shitload of things. The human foot is not. It wasn't even a cool bruise. Once I fell asleep with my arms folded behind my head. I woke up with both dislocated, so asleep I couldn't move them at all, and the muscles so tight from trying to pull the joint back in that nothing moved right anymore. I will say though, while it was a scary long few minutes trying to untangle my arms, I wasn't actually hurt. My family lacks some of the connective tissue you're supposed to have in your joints, so my arms can be pulled out of the socket without severe injury, as long as they don't get yanked too hard. But man, was that a weird, unpleasant feeling. I got attacked by a flock of seagulls when I was young. I was like 5 or 6 and it was a beautiful day and I was stuck in the car with my mom going shopping. I kept bugging her to take me to the park, and finally she relented. We stopped and got lunch at a food truck that was there. I got my food first, so I walked to the nearest picnic table, which was maybe 50-60 feet away. I sat down and started eating, when a sheet of seagulls landed all around me. One landed on the table, screeched at me and attacked me. Then the whole flock attacked me. I screamed and ran for my mom, who came running, while this massive flock chases after me. I hid behind her and she started to beat them out of the air with her purse. After she smacked a few, they flew over to my food and started to eat it. We ate in the car after that. Doctor, tried to eat lunch, was almost lunch myself. Kinda similar thing happened to me. I was working at a furniture-like factory. We made the pieces for California closets, if you know what that is. We had a router mounted to a table from underneath with an industrial vacuum hose attached over top that cut wood in a specific shape based on the jig. They both turned on with the flip of a single switch, so I'm using the router, and the sawdust isn't being sucked up. So, I did the thing everyone does when a vacuum seems to not be working. I went to check its suction by sticking my hand in the area where the router and the hose meet. The router, being connected to same switch as the vacuum, was still on as well. My middle finger took the brunt of it. I broke the bone on my finger and in the split second my fingers were in there. The router hit it 3 times. It was just fantastic. When I turned 8 I got this kick scooter for my birthday. I rode that thing all day when I was home. I practiced tricks like jumping over piles of bricks and spinning the base around and all that. At the next parent-teacher conference I took it along to show off to my friends and couldn't something worthy of my skill to jump over. Ended up choosing this crack in the hallway to show how good I was. I fucked up the landing and broke my leg. I've hurt myself in so many stupid ways, but that will always stick with me because I knew I could do so much more and fucked up the most basic thing I could come up with at the time. Every goddamn major accident I've had in the past 3 years is my fucking cat's fault. Torn intercostals, diving to catch the fucker on his way out the door, dislocated foot, avoiding the affectionate cunt in the dark, seized back, he jumped into a 200-pound container I was carrying, fucking random wrist pains I've developed. I assumed it was computer related, but last night the asshole climbed into bed with me and I pet him and he rolled just the wrong way to put pressure on the wrist and, yeah, fucking asshole. I love him. As a kid I wanted to imitate a TV show where they did different challenges in an old prison fort. One challenge had the contestants jumping on a contraption that made cannonballs fly and they needed to hit some targets. The genius I was as a 6-year-old trying to replicate it, I built my contraption with a wooden plank that I balanced on a rock like a seesaw, then I put a rock on one side and jumped on the other side. Guess what happened? The rock flew right in my face. I did not get seriously hurt, but half my face was blue for quite some time after. I was showing off my ability to burp by swallowing air. I swallowed some air. My throat hurt a little bit, and I couldn't burp it up again. I didn't really think about it again for a while. Within half an hour, I had to leave work because of chest pains. I got to the hospital. They give me antibiotics, assuming that I was having some sort of bacterial infection that was moving very fast. They pretty quickly cleared any suspicion of heart attack or lung malfunction. Eventually they figured out that I had some air in my interstitial space, between organs in my torso. I had to stay overnight to have my body absorb the air. I could have collapsed a lung by swallowing air, or gotten an infection by tearing my throat enough to force air into my chest. The antibiotics probably saved me from that latter one. Edit. Wow, this blew up. I felt a pain in my throat. So me and the doc figured I had a small tear in my esophagus where the air went through into my chest instead of my stomach. With the antibiotics they gave me, I didn't get an infection in the wound. Edit 2. I dodged a fucking bullet. https://www.merckmanuals.com/home/digestive disorders/esophageal and swallowing disorders/esophageal ruptures. I once ate Waffle House twice in one day. Then I didn't poop for 5 days. I truly thought I was gonna rupture an organ. I was in serious pain and my coworkers were like, maybe you should see a doctor? To which I said the only doctor I'm gonna be seeing is the medical examiner. I took a couple doses of laxatives and prepared for the worst. Turns out, when you're so ridiculously constipated, laxatives just bring you back to normal. Organs still intact for now. Same. Pretty sure I fractured my jaw from an illegal tackle playing football in high school. Never had it checked out. Dealt with lockjaw for 4 years. Had to be extremely careful eating anything or just moving my mouth for that matter. When it locked I'd have to use my hand to shift it over so the hinge would move freely again. Now 10 years later I have TMJ, although it's just occasional soreness and pops now. The reason I never had it looked at is because my 14-year-old self believes since I was still able to move my jaw it must not be too serious and will heal soon. Kept telling myself that and I couldn't have been more wrong. One time in grade school I was at my gym class and there was this table against the wall that had wheels and normally everyone in the class would sit on the table while we waited for our coach. So one time I wanted to fake hurting myself to skip the class. So when everyone got off the table I was still sitting there and I slowly leaned back against the wall carefully pushing the table from under me. Then the table moved really fast and I fell behind the table, which was my plan. But what wasn't in my plan was to land on my arm and twist it really bad to where I dislocated my arm. After that I had to go to the school nurse which put ice on my arm. Then I don't remember how my arm back, I just assume someone came and relocated my arm. Long story short, don't lean against walls while on a table with wheels. Broke 2 toes with pasta sauce. Pasta sauce had been batch cooked and frozen in family dinner size portion bags. Flat so they stack and take up less freezer space. 300 to 400 milliliters bag. Unsure of actual weight. Floor around freezer is ceramic tile. I had bare feet. Dropped sauce pack and it fell thin edge down. Acts like a Tom murdering dull knife smashing into my toes and getting no resistance the other side from the ceramic tiles. They took so long to heal. But all anyone could do was buddy strap and splint them because they were clean breaks. 3 months of full whack, then another 2 of strapping without splint. While delivering newspapers one frigid winter's day I slid on ice and rolled down a hill, across a road and into a snow-covered bush, bruised and banged up, but I was 13 years old, and therefore indestructible. So I picked up my newspapers and continued on my route. For the next few weeks I healed up and I thought I was okay. But then my right knee started hurting. Went to the doctor, they said, oh, it's just growing pains, don't worry about it. So I limped around for a few more months and tried to ignore it. When the pain got so bad and I could hardly stand on my leg I went to a different doctor. He did some x-rays, said oh it's nothing, try walking on these crutches for a few months to take pressure off of it and see if it'll heal up and stop hurting. A few months went by using the crutches and it still hurt. 3 painful years pass. Finally went to a sports physician who knows a thing or two about this stuff, and he found out that I had actually broken part of my bone at the knee joint. He called it osteochondritis. Basically a small chunk of bone breaks off on the weight-bearing edge of the joint and floats around in a sack of fluid, until I step wrong. Then the broken piece stabs back into the raw hole. Imagine stabbing yourself in the knee with the red-hot ice pick, and you will get an idea of what that felt like. Doctor decides we have to do surgery. They go in orthoscopic surgery, put in 2 screws to hold the bone chunk back in place, and then I'm on crutches for another 6 months. Hurts like hell, but it does heal. After the 6 months they go in and remove the 2 screws, and then another 3 months of no weight bearing until the bone has fully healed back together. It's been over 20 years since then, and now I don't have any real issues with knee except on days when it's going to rain and I can feel a slight ache in it. I hate this story so much. I've heard so many stories of doctors giving shitty diagnoses from underestimating the pain of their patients, those patients suffering for years, and then finally finding a doctor who will actually take them seriously and really look at them. Something similar happened to my mom, who was having persistent foot pain for decades and no doctor would tell her anything useful. But eventually she found a doctor who actually gave a damn and found the issue. From what I've heard and read, this is especially true for women, overweight, obese people, and doubly so for overweight, obese women. The doctor is supposed to be the person you can trust to look at your health issues and tell you how to fix them. When they continually fail at that role, it's so hard to have any amount of security in your healthcare. I woke up and went to the fridge to drink some chocolate straight from the squeezy chocolate bottle, and pushed a bunch of air out into my lungs, instead of that delicious chocolate. So I dropped to the ground in my boxers, choking to death for a solid 20 seconds. All I could think was how they'd find me dead on the floor in my boxers. Murdered by some Hershey chocolate, or lack thereof. So this will make me look like a total ass. So 2 years ago I was down at our local GA football grounds, while one of my daughters was training. I was having a mess around with my other girl. The goal ball went into the goal, and through a hole in the net. I tried putting my foot through the hole to get the ball, but my duagta ran around and got the ball and ran off with it. I went to give chase, but my foot was still in the hole in the net. I upended myself, came down hard on my chest and fractured 4 ribs. Recently my mom bought me a red fish at the market, dead, to eat, and I was super excited and wanted to send a pic of the fish to my dad since it looked hella cool. So I asked my boy to take a picture of it since it was too big to hold it with one hand. I realized the light in the kitchen was bad and decided to take the picture outside in the garden. Since I was so excited, I walked very fast and was full of happiness holding my red fish and about to take a nice pic in the garden. I ended up missing a step up and flew into the garden. My red fish flew far beyond me. My ankle never hurted so badly before. I wasn't able to get up, so my boy brought me the fish and took a picture of me holding it while laying in the grass. My tape is torn, but I got a great pic of the fish. Smile. Went permanently blind in one eye playing with a soccer ball at age 11. My neighbor kicked it just right so that when it hit the planter box on the side of the house it popped straight up 30 feet into the air. I tried to replicate this, unaware of the beehive inside the planter box. A swarm of bees engulfed me, stinging me over my entire body. But one little fucker went for my eye. He used his little legs to force my eyelids to stay open, Clockwork Orange style, and I got a very National Geographic-like memory of watching him curve his butt downwards, the stinger emerging from within, and him injecting my eyeball. 30 octoseconds later I'm still legally blind in that eye. When I was little I asked my mother when we were gardening what the knob in the middle of the shears did. When she didn't answer, I turned it anyway. The shears didn't seem to change in any noticeable way until I tried to close them, and I found out that it was to make the blades easier or harder to open. I put in the amount of force I expected to need to use to close them, but it was now drastically too much, and I closed them so quickly that I lost control and they cut my upper lip in half. It's a cool scar. That's a long list. Cutting my fingers while cleaning the dishwasher ain't even top 10. Braking with front brakes on the bike might be top 5. Other than that, I have been allowed to drink beer at 16. Germany, fuck yeah. Balancing drunk on a 2-finger wide, diameter, greater than round, rail, broached. 2 of my ribs. I was skiing a few times back in those days, before Corona. My skies are wide. I am an amateur free skier, so to say. Friends jumped over some bums while I took another bum that was actually a tree. Both binding went off and I had a flat landing until the 90 centimeters powder. I didn't hurt myself, but yeah, same skid trip. It was so FK and warm, 5 degrees Celsius on roughly 2,000 meters height. I skied in a pullover. Failing, my blue pullover was white, wet and heavyweight. They had a deal on Thursday's 1x Joggermeister €1 from 1618 colon no oh. Gods, I was drunk back then. I posted this in Taifu, but one of the last time I ever followed a celebrity. Instagram hack trend from the Kardashians about taping your bust to give it the cinched look, especially in low-cut tops. It didn't work for me, and when I removed the masking tape it ripped out a good chunk of my skin, leaving a nasty scar that runs from just underneath my armpit all the way to the lining of my underboob, about 6 inches long. On both sides. Took almost 3 weeks to heal. Had to wear loose clothing and no bra since even light chafing caused the scabbing to tear and the wound to reopen, and showering stings like MF. This is also a very southern way to hurt myself. I burned my foot when a small piece of bacon fat popped out of my cast iron skillet as I was making breakfast gravy. I had cooked bacon in the skillet, then used the rendered fat to make gravy and left the bits of bacon in there as well. The bacon piece was covered in the gravy, so instead of just sliding off the top of my foot, it stuck there. By the time I could get it wiped off and my foot rinsed, it was so scalded that it eventually blistered up and was so very painful. It was impossible to wear a shoe for a few days afterwards. One of two things: accidentally knocked a steam iron off the top of the wardrobe whilst lying on the floor and reaching for something underneath the wardrobe, and it hit me in the forehead. There was a lot of blood. I always refer to this as the time I wily coyoted myself. I was using a Stanley knife blade to cut some wires and accidentally pressed on the sharp edge of the blade twice. I had deep cuts on the end of both of my index fingers and spent a week walking around looking like Yosemite Sam as I tried not to bang them. I was doing the dishes by hand. No filthy dishwashers in my house, thank you. Well, dropped a glass and instinctively put my foot out to catch it. Forgot I had bare feet. Glass cuts foot open about an inch. Looks deep but doesn't really bleed. So shit, have to go get that stitched. Tried to put a shoe on and my big toe didn't work. 1 operation, 2 nights in hospital and 5 weeks in a Storie cast. Cut the tendon leading to my toe. So protect your feet doing dishes, people. Burning ants. One summer when I was 16, I was burning ants in our backyard with a magnifying glass and was getting bored. I decided to up my game. I scooped up some ants and threw them in a plastic pail and added gas to light it up. It worked really well, too well. The flames were too high and I was afraid my parents would catch me. To put out the fire, I thought that by kicking the pail on the side it would extinguish. It didn't. Remember, gas. It just spread on the ground and the heat from the fire melted the plastic pail when I kicked it. It splashed on the shed and on my right leg, and sure enough I was on fire. Tried to stop, drop and roll, but that didn't really do anything. Luckily a water hose was nearby and I was able to put out the flames that were cooking the side of my leg. I was in flip-flops and shorts at the time. Left me with a nasty 2nd-degree burn. I'm lucky enough to have hairy legs and it doesn't show too much. I remember removing stripes of dead flesh from my leg in the shower a few days later. Nastiest stuff ever. Oh, and it hurted like MF. I don't know which is the dumbest, so it's list time. I have been hit by 11 cars since I was 12 years old. I have never been in a car. They hit my actual body. I'm just stupid and don't pay attention. I cut my index finger on my left hand off, twice. Once at age 5-ish, opening a tube of plastic bubble stuff. Didn't know about the pointed cap, but I knew my mom had surgical scissors. Second time I was about 9, I had been gifted a Swiss Army knife, and decided I could make my molded glow-in-the-dark sword or grayskull too. Ended badly, sewed back on both times. Cut my thumb mostly off cutting a watermelon. Enough said. Surgery required. Camping in a hammock. Went to pee at like 2 a.m. Came back. Hopped into my hammock to go back to sleep. Actually hopped over my hammock, which I had hung at the edge of a small ledge. Fell backwards and broke my wrist. Went into shock. Slept it off and hiked out the next morning. Made coffee with a cup top filter in my boxers. Knocked over filter. Severely burned my junk. Like, should have. But didn't, because I'm a genius. Gone to the hospital bad. Chopping brush in my yard with a machete. Snake jumps out of bush mid-chop and startles me, so I jump, while swinging, and chop into my leg. Going off the springboard high dive at the pool at about 10. It was the 10-meter board. Guy was on the low dive, 2-meter, who always did awesome tricks. Watching him, while walking, walked off the side of the board and fell face first onto the pad around the pool. I have more. I am a fucking hazard.